Hi, everyone. Welcome. We are live here today for a webinar with Lisa Wang and Wendy Heilbut. They are going to be teaching us all about how to understand essential fundraising negotiations and legal terms. And this webinar is part of Office Hours with Lisa Wang, which is brought to you by HelloAlice.com and WomanMade, a PepsiCo initiative supporting women business owners and entrepreneurs. So Lisa, would you like to take us away and tell us a little more about what we'll be talking about?
Sure. Welcome everyone to today's live Female Founders Office Hours. My name is Lisa Wang. I'm the founder of SheWorx, and I'm very excited to have everyone here who is part of the community at WomanMade. I'm here today with Wendy Heilbut. She's a lawyer and angel investor, and we will be discussing the essential fundraising negotiations and legal terms you should know as you think about your raise. So especially if you're just starting out your fundraise, understanding what to negotiate on, whether you're raising from angel investors or venture capitalists, it's extremely important to understand these terms. So Wendy and I will do our best to share the insights around your questions today. And before we get started, I wanted to say a quick thank you to PepsiCo for making these office hours possible and Alice for hosting us. This is going to be an engaging and informative hour. And just to start, before we jump into it, in the chat at the bottom of your screen, just let us know what city you're tuning in from. Over the last few office hours, we've had people tuning in from New York, San Francisco, Portland, Oregon, all the way to Saudi Arabia and Krakow, Poland. So we've had a really I see a few others who are chiming in. Mickey Bose from New York City. We've got Casey from Hawthorne, California. We're excited to be taking our time out today, of course, Casey. So it's great to see some of you guys here. And as you hear interesting quotes or valuable nuggets of information, encourage you to write it down and engage with us on social. You can just tag me at Lisa Wang Wins, Hello Alice, PepsiCo, and Heilbut. So without further ado, today we are joined by Wendy Heilbut. Wendy is a lawyer and angel investor. She is the founder of the New York office at Jayaram Law, where she focuses her practice on advising high-growth companies on intellectual property, corporate, fundraising, and structural matters. While taking a hiatus from practicing law in 2010, she helped launch and run a startup herself, and she is passionate about promoting female founders and guides them through the many challenges of early development. She's also a mother and loves gardening, creative solutions, and family time. So Wendy, we're super excited to have you. To everyone who's tuning in, as you think of questions, feel free to just jot it in the Q&A section, and we will get to those in the second half of the discussion. So Wendy, welcome to Office Hours.
Thanks, Lisa. I'm really excited to be here. Hi, everybody. Please, yes, chime in with your questions. Happy to just talk about whatever it is that burning questions that I can speak to.
Cool. So to start off, as an angel investor, I'm curious just to hear about your investment thesis and some of the companies you've invested in.
You know, I wouldn't say I have so much of a thesis yet. I think for me, it's a lot about I'm investing as an angel, obviously very early. And it's really, I think as much as anything about the founders themselves. And I always say this when I talk to people going through, of course, you need to have a proposition that works. You need to show some proof of concept, some ability to execute on what you're building, but really it's so much about the founders and of course their passion, but also their dedication, their vision, they're just who they are really as people, and my belief in them being able to be the one to bring something to market. There are a lot of things coming out where there might be 10 or 15 companies doing it, but is this the person who is going to really make this a success versus some of the other people who are also trying it?
Got it. Can you tell us about some of the companies that are in your portfolio?
Sure. So I'm invested in a very early stage company called Gem that some of you might know about. It's a vitamin. I wish I had them here to show you. They're these little squares. They look like those. I don't know if any of you have ever brought from the health food store in those bins, the little nuggets, the little I don't know, little power nuggets or whatever they call them. So they kind of look like the small versions of those, but they're vitamins, and it contains I want to say 20, 30 superfoods, and you eat them. They're just these teeny little squares. You eat it in the morning and it's getting your vitamins, and it's much more absorbable in your body because it's coming out of natural foods versus coming from, a lot of the vitamins we're eating now are very compressed, and a lot of the extracted, we can't actually digest and break down a lot of the extraction. So that's a company I'm excited about. I just invested in them recently. I'm also invested in a company that they haven't even launched yet, but they've had a lot of excitement, a lot of enthusiasm around them, and they're building a product that's going to be, or that is, an app on your phone to work with planning your landscaping, if you will. And it's really targeting more towards interiors than exteriors, although you can use it for an exterior as well. So it uses a ton of different VR and AR to pick up elements in your space and give you a prospect of what you should plant and how you should manage your home plantings, which I'm simplifying it to a point where it doesn't even sound exciting, but it's really quite revolutionary.
Awesome.
So those are two very different types of companies. So I think maybe at some point I will have more of a cohesive thesis about the companies I invest in, but I think I'm more, it's I meet founders and I love them, and those both happen to have female founders, which I certainly have. I think actually all of my portfolio companies have at least one female founder on the team.
A lot of our female founders that tune into these types of office hours are generally more on the earlier side.
Mm-hmm.
And when you even talked about the most recent company you invested in, this interior landscape company, you said they were pre-launch. So what is it when you look at something that's early in pre-launch and doesn't yet have that traction? What are you looking for?
Well, with this company in particular, and then I'll speak a little more broadly, for them, really the IP was so exciting because they've built already the technology, and when I met them, they were patenting it. They were in the process of getting the patents through. And that's what I think is so exciting with them. So a very early stage company that's sitting on some sort of exciting technology is obviously a bit different than a lot of other early stage companies. I have a lot of clients and certainly other investments that aren't so technology driven. So I think that's a little bit easier for an investor to see the value at an earlier point because you're seeing this technology and how unique it is. I would say for an investor looking at a super, super early company, again, it's going to be so much about the founders. There's a company that I work with and I'm probably going to invest in that's very early. She's got a little bit of proof of concept, but she's building out, it's fantastic. She's building this is one of those, somebody's going to do it. It's just who's going to do it right. So she's building, it's called Work and Mother. I don't know if anybody's heard of them yet, but she's out of Austin, Texas. I see Shannon is in Austin. So Shannon, if you don't know Work and Mother, let me know. I'll introduce you to Abby. She's an amazing female founder. She's building nursing spaces. And the idea is that, not nursing, breast pumping spaces. And the idea is that they can be in office buildings. And so it can either be the office building itself pays to have it in, or it can be she's bringing it in and then the tenants pay to let their employees use the space. But what we're seeing is so many women who want to be able to pump at work. And while, yes, there are laws of what needs to be offered in an office space, a lot of women aren't satisfied with that, or it's not actually meeting the needs of a pumping, breastfeeding mother, which I've certainly been there. So this is a way where it's done in a beautiful way. It's super easy for the employers. She's gotten a contract already with Brookfield, where she's going to be, they're putting her in one of their big, huge new complexes in Austin. And so she's, I'm sorry, she's not in Austin. She's in Houston. I knew that sounded wrong when I said it, but she was in Austin this week for a pitch. She was pitching at the SoGal pitch forum in Austin. So I don't know if you went to that, Shannon, but in any event, so Work and Mother. So this is, again, so it's very early. She just got this contract with Brookfield. But I think with that, it's going to be, okay, this is a concept that the laws are there where companies need to have this. It's a huge pain point for companies to do this. And we're also seeing millennial moms and millennial women who are looking for things like this when they're taking a job. Maybe they would be willing to take a slightly smaller salary or a less prestigious company or what have you, because they're going to have a benefit like these beautiful spaces right in their building to go down to 3, 4, 5 times a day, however often they need to pump versus, I've heard stories even in big companies where they just don't have enough space and women are, coming in and out of their little room with their little pump. And this is making that a much more pleasurable experience. So I think when you're talking to investors at a super, super early stage, it's really tough because investors want something to sort of bite into. They want to be able to understand what you're doing. They want to feel like they can, get invested in you, literally. And I guess for each of you, it's a matter of how you portray that. Is it about you? Is it about the problem you're looking to solve? Is it about your team? Is it about your ability to bring together a team? Because for a lot of founders, it's a lot about how are you going to manage and run this business as it grows. Yeah, so I think it's so specific with different industries, but I think as a general prospect, if you don't have as much to show yet about your company, showing off yourself and your own skills and your own ability to turn this into something, and however you can put that together, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So Casey from Hawthorne, California, wanted to know, on that same vein, the key features when you're actually getting to know the founder, him or herself. It seems like there's this part of persistence, making it happen, but how else can people show that, and what sorts of traits do you think make for a good founder?
It's funny. I think there's been a lot written on this. I'm sure I'm not the authority. I think if you type, a lot of like big VCs write about this, but I don't think anyone has, no one's solved for this. Obviously, it's humans. We are who we are. I think personally, we probably all do this. We want to see a little bit of ourselves, in someone. So I want to see certainly Lisa, the persistence is huge. And even just the way somebody follows up with you, if they say they're going to do something, do they do it? If you ask for, let's say you ask for a deck, do they send it to you with a nice note? And how quickly do they do that? And how does it look? Have they put time into this? And look, I know that being a founder is multitasking to the max, and I don't expect everything to be perfect. And I don't expect, the pitch deck that was put together by, a professional that you paid thousands and thousands of dollars. I don't think it's that. It's that it's done in a way that really shows you've put a lot of thought and effort into it. You've done your diligence about it. You're really realistic about your business. You're really realistic about where you're going, what you aim to do. Sometimes a turnoff can be, something like, big promises that just don't make a lot of sense. A lot of people will say they don't even care about the TAM, and when you're looking at the available market, be realistic about that. Where do you really see yourself playing into the current market? Be realistic about who your competitors are. I love when a founder tells me who their competitors are and why. Number one, there's other players in the space. So that's actually valuable to know. Hey, there's other players. You're not the only one. I had a founder once tell me, oh, no, I'm the only one that does this. No one's doing this. And then I was all excited. I turned to somebody in my investing group, like, oh my God, look what she's doing. She's the only one. They're like, are you kidding me? I hear about somebody doing this every other month, So being, kind of leading I guess it's certainly persistence and showing your skills, but also kind of leading your investor along. So leading your investor towards that investment. So helping them with the information they might need. And sometimes it's something that you might think is negative, like who your competitors are. But I think that's really positive and really shows that if there's 20 investors doing exactly what you're doing, that's the problem, not you. So if there's two or three competitors doing something similar, but you know why you're going to do it better or why you're going to be the one, then tell me. Put that out there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what are those advantages? Because obviously there's advantages if they're saying there are other competitors that they have specific IP or technology that's different. But a lot of times, if it's not technology that someone has that's different, but perhaps, it's softer. How do you communicate that? Because what I've seen in terms of pushback is that sometimes people will say, well, we have these competitors, and then an investor will ask, well, that competitor has already raised so much more money. How are you going to compete against them? And it kind of boxes the founder into a corner.
I think, again, it depends so much on what you're offering, but I think it's a great question in that, for example, I spoke to a founder yesterday who had come out of, within her industry. She'd been at a big company, and now she was sort of starting out on her own and building a business. One of the things that struck me was all the relationships she had. She kept talking about how she knew the young, hungry people who were going to come do it just as well as anyone else. They'd trained from the best, but they were eager to come work with her because they knew her. So what is it? Why do you think you can beat them out? Okay, do you have relationships that you can leverage? Are you going to take that unfair advantage and sort of leverage that? Whatever it is, I don't care what the unfair advantage is, find your unfair advantage and talk about how you're going to use that to make your business more successful. So for example, this woman, her unfair advantage was she'd just been in the industry at a big player a few years ago. She knew what was wrong, and she knew who to pull and how to put together, build a really lean team to start with the very talented people who she knew she could get on part-time bases who had been working with these bigger players and trained sort of at the best within the industry. But there's other unfair advantages you see. Somebody's background, because of whatever their background might be, maybe they went to, some particular, corporate event, or some, they have access to, if it's not people, maybe they have access to some sort of resources. Maybe they have contacts. They're building a fashion brand and they have great contacts overseas because of all the vendors that they worked with when they worked somewhere else. I have a client who's in a situation like that. She worked at a big, very, very, fine a fashion house. Now she's building her own much lower price point brand, but she's got all of those relationships that she's able to use. They would never work with somebody in her position, but for the pre-existing relationships.
So in some, it seems like there's experience, there's network and the access to the network, and then potentially team, right? Who's actually working with you.
Yeah, and another one you didn't say, which I think is also important, is just your innate skills, right? So that's a lot harder to showcase. But for example, your ability to network, right? So if, hey, I'm really great at bringing people together and meeting people and getting out there, and this is how I'm going to market my products. Maybe it's, you're going to kind of be the marketing face of a company eventually, or something. I think one way that sometimes I see it when I meet a founder is sometimes there's a founder team and sometimes there's not. Sometimes it's a single founder, sometimes it's a team. But if it's either way, you can already, as an investor, you can sort of see like, oh, okay, when the company grows and that management team is 3 or 4 people or 10 people or 15 people, where do these people fit in? And are they being realistic about that? So like, this person's background is marketing and this person's background is finance. Well, right now they're building a company, the two of them, but eventually there's going to be a technology person and there's going to be, an HR person, there's going to be but I can already see how they really have grown in those skills, and they're going to build, they're going to use those skills to build those pieces and hire around as they need. And are they sort of realistic about who they are and showcasing their expertise?
You've used the term realistic a number of times. And I think that there is often a balance, because from when I compare female founders and male founders, it seems like women tend to be more realistic, more detail-oriented and thorough. But in many, many ways, we've been criticized for being too realistic and not ambitious enough. So how do you, if we just specifically go into the market size, if you were to go up and talk about, let's say realistically, maybe you think you could get a quarter billion versus the next founder who comes in and says, well, we could do $1 billion. Where do you lie when it comes to how founders should talk about themselves?
It's a good one. And this is maybe like controversial what I'm going to say, but I think that's one of our strengths as women. And I don't think the world has caught up yet, unfortunately. And I'm not saying you shouldn't change your game if you feel like that would be better for you. Pull some big numbers out and throw them around. Why the hell not? But I do think that, unfortunately, it's taking a long freaking time. But I think eventually we'll get to where women founders are just being seen for what we are, which is much more pragmatic and realistic in a lot of ways. And I'm not saying that men aren't, but I think if we're going to generalize a little bit, there's, I'm starting to see articles, I'm starting to see some buzz about this, that as if we want to parse out like sort of the traditional male female qualities, and I'm not going to say that men don't have some of them and women don't have some of the male ones, but women tend to be a little bit more known for multitasking, for being more pragmatic and a little bit more realistic. And I think those skills are just going to be seen as the value that they hold. The value that they hold is going to be more appreciated and recognized in founders. So I say, I guess maybe I should say be authentic. Maybe that's a better word. And sometimes, yes, when you're pitching in front of a room of men, I will be the first one to say, lead with numbers. Men want to see numbers. Women tend to relate a little bit better to a story. So if you start out your pitch with the story about how you and your founder met, or why this is a problem in the marketplace, or why your business is going to solve the world's, X problem, that's awesome. But if you're pitching to a room full of men, either start with or quickly pivot into numbers, because I think you'll lose them if you don't have some numbers right away. With a room full of women, if it's a mixed room, obviously, find a balance. But if it's a room full of women, you can stick a little bit more to the story and bring the numbers in later. That's sort of what the studies have shown. So yes, absolutely. I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, but I think you have to be authentic about who you are and play to your strengths as who you truly are as a person. But yes, it's a show, and there's an opportunity there certainly to, this is time to show off. What was it? There was some quote about like, this anyway, I'm going to badger it. So I'll just say, this is your chance to show off. This is your 6 minutes or whatever to show off. So don't use this to be bashful. Play your biggest hand. Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard a number of female founders who have said that they don't like bragging. And that is something that we have to put aside, especially when it comes to fundraising, because it is, as you said, your moment to, and maybe brag has a bad connotation, but really show your strengths.
Yeah, that's it. That's what it's all about. It's not time to get up there and do anything but that. Yep. If it's like it's a sales pitch, right? It's a first date. It's a time to be your best. And then if they liked it, then you get to show them all the other stuff. So don't worry, like that's going to come out if there's something that you think like, oh, they should know about this. It doesn't have to come out in the first 6 minutes. It can come out later.
Yeah. Yeah. So Roxana just said, great advice I've never heard before, i.e. losing men by not sharing numbers up front. And we have a anonymous attendee who asks, what additional things do you look for in single founders that you would not for companies that have multiple co-founders?
So what would I look for in a company?
So if there's a solo founder, are there additional you're looking for things that you would ask?
That's interesting. I've never thought about it that way. I guess just making sure there's a team around that founder, a good team, because I think being a single founder has certainly pros and also certainly cons that I think are kind of talked about maybe a little bit more. So making sure there's a support system around to fill in some, nobody can do, none of us are a world unto ourselves. None of us can do it all. So just making sure they have a good team around them. I don't think there's anything else. I don't see, personally, there might be other investors who feel differently, but I don't see a real negative that I would be looking for something specific. I wish I could go into that more, but I'm not sure. I'll think about it. If I think of anything else, I'll speak up.
Okay, great. So I want to go into one of the questions around legal terms, especially given your background. So as a founder, what types of legal terms should they be aware of when they're fundraising from angels and VCs, and if they're considering convertible versus priced round?
Yeah, totally. So just general, and I don't know how much information and knowledge sort of the audience has, so I'll be pretty basic to start, and then we can get into some more specifics. But essentially there's a price round and there's convertible debt. So basically convertible debt is you're essentially borrowing money from these investors at root. Like that's really what's happening. It's being set up legally as a promissory note, as borrow, but no one intends for you to pay that back. What they intend to happen is before the maturity date on that loan, so before that loan becomes due, that money will convert into equity. And what would cause, there's triggering events that would cause that money, that investment to convert into equity. And the main one would be a price round. And that's what everyone hopes will happen. So you might have a convertible note today with a 2-year maturity date. We're assuming that sometime between now and 2 years, you're going to raise typically a Series A, and you're going to have that's going to be a priced round. So there's going to be a set price that the shares are worth. And then my convertible equity my convertible debt that I put in today flips and becomes priced shares within the 2-year window. So it's very, very common with your first money in to take that not at a price round. And I always advise that because it's really hard to set your valuation this early on. You do have to set some sort of a valuation, but it's typically more of like a cap. And that cap just means even if your price round is higher than that, you'll let your investors come in at that rate, that cap on your convertible debt. And there's some other benefits that convertible investors typically get a little discount. They are earning interest on their loan. So not their loan, but their investment is earning interest, so that by the time you convert, they do get a little bit more. But yeah, so that convertible, you've probably heard the term SAFE, S-A-F-E, and then convertible note. Those are kind of the most common convertible equity. So the convertible note is the traditional typical convertible instrument, and they're pretty standard. You're going to see more or less the same language out of, most law firms. There's a few terms you have to think about. How much money are you capping at the amount you're going to raise? What's your valuation cap? Are you going to offer a discount? When your maturity date's going to hit. This is one that isn't always an issue, but sometimes it is. You give yourself a runway for how long you're going to keep that note open. So how long can you continue to accept investments? So typically the closing is the first date it opens, is the first closing. So closing just means kind of the deal closes, you get the money, they get their signed documents, but you can have multiple closings over some period of time. Maybe it's 180 days, maybe it's, whatever it is. And then at that point, that round is closed, and maybe you'll open another round. Sometimes you do a second unpriced round. You might do a second convertible note round, or you might then wait and do a price round. You might jump right into a price round if things are going gangbusters. There's no rhyme or reason to how these work. Sometimes it's a few years. I do sometimes have clients who will have a convertible note, and then that maturity date hits and they haven't converted. They're not ready to convert. That happens. It's not that uncommon. You go back to your investors. The investors do not want their debt to come due. They do not want that. So as long as things are going well and there's a reason you haven't raised that Series A, maybe you just didn't need it, or maybe or not Series A, whatever series you're going to call it, but your price round you have raised, whatever the reason is, you go back to your investors and you discuss, hey, can we renegotiate a little bit and push this out another year, or whatever you think you need, 6 months, whatever it is. So
have you seen instances where, because I know the SAFE doesn't actually have a maturity date.
Right.
And doesn't have interest, and that's why it's founder friendly.
Right.
Have you seen instances where, as you said, on a convertible note, the maturity date comes and goes, or on the SAFE where, let's say the founder becomes profitable and just decides not to raise a price round?
I haven't been part of that, but I know it happens. And then you have a few choices, right? You can either come up with some number that you're going to convert, just so they can convert and come out of that promise. I mean, the investors have that document, so you can just decide to pay them back with the interest if it's on a note or a SAFE, which is not really what anyone wants. So they, at least, especially the early stage investors, one thing I will say, and I hope everyone knows this, you do not want a bad relationship with your investors. You're looking for investors who you guys are on the same team. And, if in the situation Lisa's talking about, and your company is just like, hey, we don't need to raise any more money, we're just sticking around with what we've got, great. At that point, you don't want to piss your investors off, because you never know, might need more money, but maybe you go to them and you say, this is the plan. What do you guys, what do you think? Or you work with your advisors or your, team of, whoever that is, co-founder, lawyer, whoever you're working with, to kind of come up with a plan, or maybe make some proposals. Like we propose either, we'll buy the, if you have enough money and you just want to buy them out, maybe, which they may not want, because no one's investing as an angel assuming to make their same money. I haven't personally been part of it, but I know it happens, and I think you kind of handle it on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah. Or someone just is unable to raise their next round.
Oh yes, that happens. Of course, that happens. That does happen a lot. Yeah, and that's why angel investing is risky. Of course, angel investing is about a lot of losses, and then you hope you get some big wins where you got in really early. But yes, of course that happens, and founders, I'm sure it's painful, but you bounce back and you start something else, and then you're a second-time founder, and everyone loves second-time founders.
Yeah. So Shannon and Amber have a similar question, which is, first, Amber asked, should you set a specific time limit for your raise or leave it more open-ended? And then on a follow-up question from Shannon, how long do you typically see deals taking from the initial meeting to the closing?
Great questions. So the first one, yes, you should for two reasons. One, just because it's simpler, kind of the way your legal structure is set up and stuff, it makes sense. But also for you, I mean, I don't know how many of you on this call have gone through fundraising, but it's very time consuming, and you're possibly traveling to pitch, and you're pitching, and you're getting nervous, and it's just very, very time consuming. You're communicating with potential investors. I've been on calls with with founders I'm considering investing in, and been on numerous calls with them and not invested. And you can only imagine that happens, I'm sure, a lot. So you're spending a lot of time, and you're a founder and you need to go run your business. So I think that definitely set yourself a window and be realistic. And I know you don't know what realistic means yet, but maybe you say, all right, I'm going to give it 3 months and see what happens. And then at 3 months you can reevaluate, or I'm going to give it 6 weeks, like whatever you think you can pull away from your company. And you'll still have to run your company, don't get me wrong, but pull a lot of your time away from your company. Yeah. And the other thing I think about setting a timeline is it helps get your investors on board, because you're saying, hey, this is ending, and get me while I'm hot, because then I'm closed and I'm not available anymore. And the second question was,
how long do you typically see the deals taking from initial?
Yeah. That is all over the place. That really runs the gamut. And, I've seen big, well-known venture capital firms sort of jerk people around for a long time, unfortunately. And, it's unfortunate. And this is where for you setting, if the founder sets the deadline, at least it gives you an opportunity to just say, you know what, tomorrow, like at the end of the week, we're closing the round. I hope you'll be in. And if not, then, as the founder, I would advise you to just walk away. Now, I know that's hard if maybe they've, sort of told you some large amount of money is, on the table. I'm part of an angel network, and one of the unfortunate sort of concepts is that women are slow. And the group I'm part of, one of the missions of it was to be fast. So from the day that a founder pitches until the day we tell them whether or not they're going to be invested is 30 days. So we guarantee them a month, which is not crazy. I think some of the other angel networks, I'm here in New York, I think some of the angel networks in New York operate on a somewhat similar time schedule. Individual investors are obviously going to have very much of their own time schedule. You being available as a founder with information and quickly like creating maybe a Dropbox with a lot of your relevant files, that can be super helpful, because then investors can just have that at their fingertips. That can help move the process along. They're not waiting on things from you. And those documents don't need to be anything crazy at this early stage. It can literally be like marketing reports, or if there's any agreements you have in place, those can go in there. It can be your decks, your collateral that you created. I mean, anything that tells the story of your company that an investor might be interested in seeing, you can put it in there.
Great. And you mentioned the angel group. So how do you build a relationship with potential angel investors or angel groups, especially if, you're kind of fresh into this scene?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I haven't done it myself, so I don't know, but being on the other side of it, like I get a lot of reach out. I have on my LinkedIn that I'm an investor, and I decided I wanted that there. I get a lot of outreach from LinkedIn that I just don't have the bandwidth to pay attention to, unfortunately, and I should, and I'm sure I miss out on things because I don't. But I will say that when I do kind of skim through the messages, I'd say 8 or 9 out of 10 are very clearly just like a blast that's not really speaking to me, if you get what I'm saying. It just feels very salesy. Once in a while, something will grab my attention and I'll communicate with them. But I have heard of people making contacts through LinkedIn. So don't assume that's a no. I would say try it out. I mean, it's a lot about tapping your network, maybe joining different, if there's groups within your communities. A lot of you are in big cities where I'm sure there are tons of events, and just go to as many of those as you can. Stuff in the evening, stuff during the day, and not just about the panelists necessarily, but meeting the other people in the audience. You never know. A lot of angels go to those kind of events. They go to pitch days for other incubators, things like that, where you can meet other investors just in the room. You might be sitting next to an investor. They might not be interested in you, but they might know who. I introduce people to other investors all the time who I know might be more interested in what they're, in their specific, their type of business. If it's not something I'm, have the appetite for at that moment, might be in an industry that I know this person loves that industry. Let me introduce you to that person. Yeah. And I guess just being really thoughtful about your follow-ups. I've had some instances where I've taken time to talk to a founder and they said they were going to send me X, Y, and Z, and then 2 or 3 days go by and then that X, Y, and Z comes. And by then I've sort of forgotten about them. And this isn't even necessarily for me, but for me helping them more than me investing in them. So, try to build your schedule such that, if you're going to do outreach, you're prepared to respond pretty quickly. And that's just, it's hard to manage because you just never know when things are going to come up. And with this founder in particular, I didn't want to hold it against her, but literally what had happened was I just got into a period where I was just so busy for about a week. And then I think the time had sort of lapsed for her. And had she been able to send it to me right away, I would have been able to help her, I think, right away.
It seems like
yeah.
you're looking for a 24-hour window of response.
I think, and I don't always do, I think that I'm terrible about that, but I think, yes, if you're asking yeah, that's probably, I think that's probably good, Lisa. I don't know. What do you think? Is that realistic?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little mixed on that personally, because I think that, well, I mean, we talked about this briefly, but I'm also the art of trying not to respond as much to things that are maybe not as relevant to my goals. So I've been actually trying to build in a schedule of like at least responding once every 2 to 3 days, but then we were also on vacation. So it's also different. And I'm getting back into that. But I do think in the fundraising process, that usually you try and get back within 48 hours, because sometimes people want you to gather a bunch of information. But on the flip side of that too, sometimes you do respond within 24 hours and then the investor doesn't come back for over a week. So.
Yeah. And that's where I'm saying I'm guilty of. And I think, but you made a good point, Lisa. You did say when it's something that really serves your goals. So as an investor, not that investors don't want to communicate with founders, because of course that's what they want to do. But an investor's goal might be satisfied by receiving the information, looking at it and moving on. Whereas the founder's goal is met by putting that information in the hands of the investor. So I think as the founder, unfortunately, it is sort of your job to, I think 24 to 48 hours is all very realistic. If something is, in the situation I used as the example, it was very much of a time is of the essence situation. Like she was looking for something within, let's say, a week and a half. And when she waited 3 days, and then it put me in a situation where I was just completely unable to respond meaningfully within 5 or 6 days. And then, that sort of week and a half window had pretty much closed. So I that maybe wasn't a great example, but yes, I think 24 to 48 hours. And right, I'm with you. Like we're all trying to like have real lives and not just be sitting on our computers all day. So, but when you are fundraising, you kind of have to probably sit in front of your computer a lot.
Yeah. Amber wants to know, what's the benefit of an angel group versus angel investors? And as a founder, do you get as much attention when there's so many angels in one group?
So I think individual angels are great if you know how to find them and communicate with them and work with them. And that's awesome. And that's great. The nice thing about groups is they have a little bit more of a system that you can kind of go through to be part of their pitch. So be in consideration for their pitch. And within the angel network, at least with mine and the few that I've visited, basically there'll be like a pitch day. And so maybe it's once a month, maybe it's every other month, however frequently it is. And the companies that have been selected to pitch come and pitch one after the other in front of a room full of people. So the nice thing is as an angel, you're getting to see a lot of companies at once that have been pretty curated down already. And the investor is getting the opportunity to speak in front of a lot of people. So for example, in my angel group, we all invest individually. So it's really just an opportunity for us to sit in the room together, see a lot of companies, and then get to decide who we want to invest in. There are some angel groups that invest as a syndicate. So it's still, obviously individuals. I don't know of any angels. Yeah, the angels, it's going to be their own money. It's just maybe it's being invested through a vehicle, through a syndicate vehicle. So you're getting that. That angel network is your investor versus the angel group I'm in, 37 angels, the individual people are your investors, if that makes sense. But it's still the individual angels are always the ones making the decision. So it's not like a VC where it's not pooled money like you would get in a VC. And there are micro VCs that invest really early, but you're more typically at this stage going to be looking at individuals investing.
Great. Casey wanted to know, what is your typical check size range, and do you prefer investing in companies that are local or nearby to you?
Oh, interesting. No, I don't have a feeling about local or nearby at all. I have family from St. Louis, and there's a new fund starting in St. Louis that they were interested in getting me involved as like a GP, in large part because they were really trying to serve areas of the country that aren't, New York, California, sort of Boston, some of the cities that get a lot more attention, which I found super exciting. It hasn't launched. I haven't yet gotten involved, but I like that idea of investing in areas where there aren't necessarily as many investors, frankly. And the valuations are usually a little bit lower because the cost of running a business is a little bit lower. So you can be, very attractive to your investors in that way. So no, the answer is no to that. And then the other question was,
typical check size.
You know, it's very personal. I'm not going to answer that for myself, but I will say for angels, I think you're looking at probably somewhere from about 20, as an individual, probably like maybe let's say 10 to 25 on the low end, and then on up to maybe like 75 to 100 on the high end, typically from individuals. Now, of course, you're going to find outliers. Most founders, and I would probably caution you against putting, you know, $5,000, $10,000 investment. 10,000 is fine. Let's say $5,000 investment on your cap table. That's a little tricky because then you might end up with 300 investors. You know what I mean? To get to your round, and then that's a lot of people to wrangle when you need to move things along and issue more shares or whatever it is you're doing next. What you might want to do at that point is ask a group of investors to pool together, and that's a syndicate. So a bunch of investors would get together, they pool their money together. And I have done this with another investor friend of mine. We put together a syndicate that our syndicate so far has only made one investment. We just started it. So we're hopefully going to do some more, but it's just a nice way for maybe investors who want to invest smaller amounts, but in more companies. And there's a lot of syndicates out there and growing, it's becoming a common way to get more people investing.
Great. So I want to get to the negotiation part of the fundraise. And so let's say you've gotten through a couple meetings and the investor's interested, and now you're starting to talk terms like the valuation cap and you know, how much they're going to put in. How do you negotiate this, and when should you start negotiating with an investor?
So at the very early stages that we're sort of talking about, this angel round, typically you're very public about what your valuation is and what you're looking to raise. You'll probably hear pretty early on if an investor is interested but thinks that your valuation is off. Or you might realize that you're not getting anywhere, and maybe you can start asking investors, well, why? And if you're really not getting a lot of response, or even just ask other founders or start looking around sort of in the ecosystem, maybe my valuation is a little bit off. I think with the valuation piece, because at this stage, it doesn't actually mean all that much, but it's also very hard to come up with. It's kind of like a number. I mean, there's no scientific formula for your valuation. There are scientific formulas out there. I don't know if any of them are right, but the valuation at this early stage is sort of a made up thing. So I would be somewhat flexible on that. Obviously if you're set your valuation at X and an investor says, I think it should be half X, maybe that's a little aggressive. But if an investor thinks you're just, 10% over or 20% over where you should be, talk to them about why, and maybe talk to them about why you came up with the number you came up with. And, I've certainly seen clients bring their numbers down when investors say they think they're too high, and I think that's fine. So that should be an open conversation. I think, if it starts to feel really contentious and you think they're just trying to get a deal out of you, then maybe that's just a red flag to begin with. Sort of suss out why they're doing that and why you think they're being that way. Because especially at this early stage, these investors are going to be with you. Early stage investors often get bought out later in the game, but they're going to be with you for a while and through these early years. So you want people that you feel like are on your team. And then as far as negotiating the check size, yeah, you can always try to push them up for more. I mean, I think if somebody's really excited to invest and they're offering something super, super low, again, like the $5,000 to $10,000 range, you might want to just say, hey, I'm excited, but right now I'm really looking for larger checks. Is there any chance that I can get you to 10,000 so I can put you on the, whatever, there's, I'm sure, nice ways of saying it. If you're talking to large, high net worth angels who maybe want to invest, or not even high, just angels who are interested in investing higher amounts, I think there's probably a little more room for negotiation, because maybe the difference for them between 80 and 100 is not the same as somebody from 5 to 10. Maybe not. I mean, different people allocate their money differently. I think you can always, it's just like any negotiation. I think you can always ask for more. As far as when to do it, you could start with, hey, this is what I'm looking for. I've certainly had people pitch to me and say, I'm not taking checks lower than 50,000. And then you decide as an investor if that's something you want to even hear or not.
Yeah. Great. Roxana wanted to know, for a seed or angel round, do you think it's necessary to break down in your deck how the capital will be used? Or is just ask and purpose okay as a talk, and using the breakdown as a talking point?
That's interesting. And it's probably very personal. It's funny. I think a lot of this stuff is somewhat personal between different angels. I love knowing what the money is being used for, not because I'm going to hold them to that, but it gives me a sense of where they see themselves going. So if you've got in your in your deck a slide about that, that's great. If you're going to talk about it off the slide, that's okay too. I think it's worth putting on a slide. I think it's worth, hey, we're using this money to hire a marketing person. We're using this money. It doesn't have to be like, super, super broken down, but just a general concept, because then it helps investors see what you're prioritizing next. Sorry,
Great.
my light just like turned itself off. There we go. Okay.
And Mickey wanted to know, have you seen founders become successful at raising money to prove a hypothesis with the beginnings of some proof of concept? So I think what Mickey's saying is pre-launch and raising money in order to prove a hypothesis that they have. So very, very early.
Like, I have an idea, give me some money so I can put that idea together. Yeah. I think it's a tough one. I mean, I don't know that I would invest in that. If you have friends and family, like that's where you're gonna have to go to friends and family that really believe in you. I think you're gonna have a hard time getting strangers to believe in that. Yeah. I mean, if it's an incredible hypothesis, I don't know. I think that'd be a tough sell.
Yeah. I mean, I think especially in today's fundraising climate, maybe it used to be early on that you had a big idea and a big vision. But I think especially now they talk about how, the seed round is really like the early A round, and some of those seed investors are actually looking for the same type of traction they might look for at an A round.
I think that's true. And I think that's a good point, Lisa, also when you talk about the difference between individual angels and an angel network. So an angel network is probably going to be looking for a lot more proof of concept, just because they're really curating a group of founders to a large audience, versus maybe an individual investor who's a little more able to, take a little bit more risks because it's themselves, maybe if it's something they're super passionate about. So an individual angel who invests in, your space. And the other thing I would say is if you're a serial founder, so you've founded a few successful companies already, you might get people to invest, on a napkin or whatever the idea.
Great. And let's see. We have another anonymous attendee who says, what do you see as bad uses of capital on slide decks?
Meaning like
if there's, perhaps a category you think the capital should not be used in, or you see founders throw away money in a certain type of category.
Interesting. From a backward looking, I don't know that I've ever seen it, because it's just at that point, they're still so early. It's hard to say they did anything quote unquote wrong, right? There might be a pivot that happened or will happen in the future. Forward looking, again, it's tough. I mean, I've seen everything from, I literally need this money to fulfill an order, like a company will have a big, they're very new and they got an order for something, whether it's like let's say it's a food product company, they just got a huge order from a grocery store. They literally don't have the money to, buy the inventory. So that obviously makes sense. Other typical things you see are, different hiring, marketing budgets, things like that. I don't think I've ever seen anything where I thought it was bad, or it didn't stick out to me if I did.
Yeah. Amber wants to know, do you invest in companies who launch their concept on their own, so I guess with bootstrapping and without investment, and are showing positive traction but are yet to turn a profit?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I don't think anyone needs to see a profit. I don't think that's necessary at all at this stage. If you're bootstrapping and you're showing like stickiness and proof of concept, I think that's exciting. And no one's looking for, not no one. I would say most angels aren't necessarily looking for a profit. I mean, there's WeWork's not, what is it? There's some of these huge companies that still aren't profitable. So,
So
they're not a good example right now.
Would you say then, based off of that answer, for an early stage founder, that it's more important for them to potentially even lower their prices so they can get more users and show user traction and retention, and then perhaps later increase their prices? Or should they be focusing on actually charging let's say the right amount that they should be charging?
It's a good question, because I think it's such a funny world we live in right now where, like you're saying, not turning a profit might be the best way to make money nowadays, which is a little crazy. Yeah, no. And you see a lot of these, a lot of free, not pre-launch, something, an app launches and it's, you can get in free this month for, the year or something, so they can have a lot of membership right off the bat. It's a tough one. I mean, it depends. I think it really depends on what your product is, what you're selling. If you're selling like a D2C product, something like that, and you're going to lose a lot of money if you undercut yourself, and it's really going to be painful. Maybe not, but at the same time, if you're a D2C and you really think that you're going to build customer loyalty and your customers are going to come back to you month after month, maybe there's a membership model or there's some sort of reason that you would come every season or something like that. Maybe it does make sense to just get them in the door for that first initial buy-in. But yeah, you don't want to also at the same time show like that you don't understand profit and loss, because that's gonna be unfortunate. Yeah, unfortunate work.
And Alex wants to know, how do you evaluate proof of concept? That might go to some of our earlier answers, but if you have any thoughts.
I think it's so different, right? It's so industry specific. Proof of concept, and I don't know that I know the answer to that. I think showing that your relevant consumers would be interested. So whatever your relevant consumers are, if your relevant consumers are oil and gas companies, proof of concept, you want to, have $1 million contract, maybe proof of concept is 3 good meetings. I don't know, versus proof of concept for a D2C product might need to be that you've been selling it for, 18 months and you've sold, X hundreds or thousands of units. It's tough. Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah. And then another question from Amber. She says, when should founders put a salary in their raise? And then as a follow-up, what should the salary be?
I think yes. I don't think that's inappropriate at all. I mean, I don't want to see a founder who can't pay their rent, because that's not, they're not going to be happy with their job and they're not going to be able to, it's not sustainable. You want to see a founder who can survive, and you want people to be, I don't want to say scrappy, but you want people to be, putting their money in smart places. So I think giving yourself a salary makes a lot of sense. I see that a lot at the first raise, because that's really important at the beginning to give themselves a salary. But be modest, and it's going to be different in every geographic location, but depending upon where you live and what your rent is or your, mortgage or whatever it might be. If you have an opportunity where you don't have to, you can live, like I remember looking at a company where it was 4 co-founders, and they rented a house, and one guy was married. It was 4 men, actually. I didn't invest in this company, but one was married. So him and his wife lived elsewhere and had a salary, a very small salary. The other 3 lived together in a shared house that they basically paid for out of, like, I don't know, a very small amount of money from the company. It was like a line item, rent in this house. And like, that was it. And then I don't know what they ate. I guess they must have had some money for food or something like that. And I remember thinking how, like, these were like young guys right out of college, but, and I'm not saying you have to do that at all, but that's kind of like, there's people out there doing that. So, whatever you can do to make it truly, truly work for you, where you feel healthy and safe, and, like you can be a good founder, but without, this probably isn't, you're not going to be able to live the luxury life when you're, at this seed stage, probably, unless you have money, your own money, but on your investors' money, it's probably not going to look so good.
Yeah. And I can say, even from experience, it's when you have the headlines about founders raising millions of dollars, well, let's just say the first $1 million or a couple million, that $1 million is not actually going to their lifestyle at all. And and it actually, this is not a get rich quick business at all. And it's probably one of the hardest things to do, but I do think it is really important to not just eat ramen, out of a box every day and think that is what you need to do to prove that you're a serious founder. And it's actually, if you are going to be the founder and CEO, that you need to figure out how to take care of yourself first, and what type of salary you need to be able to do that so you can run the company effectively.
Totally. Yep.
Yeah.
And building that into your lifestyle and being proud of that, I think too. I love seeing that. Like, I was listening to a podcast with the founders of The Skim, and they were saying that, like, they have, I don't remember what they call it, but at their company, everyone just puts on their calendar every day, like some chunk of time that's just like personal time, whatever they call it. And it can be like, it's your time to go to the gym, it's your time to talk to your therapist, it's your time, whatever. And it's just like a deep value of their company. And they learned that when it was the 2 of them still just starting off, and in the situation you're talking about, where they were like burning themselves out, and they were like, this isn't going to work. So they started this thing where now they're, they have a lot of employees, obviously, and everyone at the company does it, but it started with, so feel free to do that for yourself and be proud of it, that, hey, I take, half an hour in the morning and a half an hour in the evening to meditate, or I duck out at lunchtime and go exercise, and there's days obviously where you can't do that, but yeah.
Yeah, great. And last question from Casey. She wants to know what your thoughts are on VC scouts, pros and cons.
Tell me what you mean, like VCs coming out to look
So
for you?
there's scouts are people who are not necessarily VCs, but are hired to, or not necessarily hired, but it's find good deal flow, bring them
Yep.
in. I think depending on the
Got it.
agreement, perhaps they get a cut of some sort if they do.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. I guess the pros are it's just more boots on the ground, meeting companies. There's so many companies out there. And I think that it's nice to think that, and especially if the VC is getting these scouts to go to maybe meet with demographics that don't normally walk in their door. I think that's fantastic. So I think that's a huge pro, just more eyeballs out there seeing companies and interacting with companies. I think the con can really be, and this can be even somebody who's in a VC, but maybe isn't a decision maker, is you may find yourself getting really excited and having many, many conversations with a scout or even just a lower level person within a VC and think that things are going well because this person is giving you a lot of really positive feedback. And then you learn that this person has no power in the decision-making process. And all of that was sort of for naught. And when you finally meet with the right person, they have zero interest. It's a dance, obviously. At the same time, a lot of the way these VCs work is, of course, the managing directors and the head partners aren't the people out showing up at the pitch events every time. I'm sure they are sometimes, but so I think just be wise about who you're talking to and feel really comfortable asking who they are and what their relationship is to the VC and maybe a way to ask is what's the process? What's the process for your VC to invest in me? And hopefully they're forthcoming about that with you. Oh, the process is I send your information across the country and they decide if they want to talk to you or not. And that's okay. And then
Yeah, great. Well, this was super informative. And if I were to give the takeaways, kind of some of the just like little quotable quote type takeaways is don't be afraid to talk about your unfair advantage. When you're pitching to a room full of men, go to the numbers first before the story. For women, you can spend a bit more time on the story in general. Be able to show stickiness and proof of concept early on, not necessarily needing to focus on turning a profit immediately. When you're showing proof of concept, at least be able to show that the relevant consumers are interested. And this last thing that I just think is important is the ability to ask the simple question, what's the process? And I think that's true for anything. That's just a great question to have as a tool. Every time perhaps there's ambiguity and you need some clarity. So,
and I'm going to just jump and say, I think that's a question that when I bringing it full circle to the beginning, I think those are the kind of questions that make me as an investor think that this is a great founder, that they're asking me a question like this. They really want to understand how, they're not just like, oh, okay, great, I'll send you my stuff, but okay, what's the process? What happens from here? It just feels like a very sage question, I think.
Yeah. For everyone here, what is the best way to get in contact with you, whether through LinkedIn or social or email, if they did want to reach out to you?
Yeah, probably for me, the best is my email. Like I said, on LinkedIn, I post on LinkedIn. I'm not great with responding to messages on LinkedIn. And I will say I'm a little behind on email, so don't expect a response in 24 to 48 hours from me. But please do feel free to email me anytime. And my email is just Wendy at Jayaram Law, Jayaram. So it's all A's, Jayaram law.com, or you can go to our website and my email's there with my profile. If you type my name into Google, I think the firm website comes up pretty quickly and you can find my email there.
Great. And then the last thing, just for everyone here who's tuned in, thanks again for being a part of this. Again, if you have any quotable quotes, feel free to tweet them out or Instagram them out. I'll be doing office hours in a couple weeks again, so every other week. And then if you are interested, I'm also hosting a fundraising masterclass. So that's going to be a live one and it's free. And if you do want to sign up, you can go to the website here. And with that, I want to turn it back to Team Alice to close us off.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Wendy. Thank you, Lisa. That was a super insightful conversation and just really great questions from the audience. So good job, everyone. And thanks for attending today. If you're looking for more support in your business and to register for the next office hours, there's a link in the chat there for the WomanMade community on hellols.com. And we're just always there to support women-founded businesses like yourselves and everyone else that's looking to, take on this road of entrepreneurship. And it's with great support like Lisa Wang, Wendy Heilbut, PepsiCo, and more that are helping us to fulfill that mission. So thank you all again.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.